Jesus talks about how the foxes and the birds have their creature comforts, literally. Are you willing to give up your creature comforts for the sake of following Jesus? Now, we're not saying that Jesus is going to require you to give up your creature comforts, and I'm certainly not saying that after this sermon you go and you sell your house, and that's not at all. And that's not what Jesus is saying either. What Jesus is saying is, are you ready? If asked, would you give up your stuff and your safety and your security for Jesus? Would you give up the creature comforts that you have to follow after Him? This man said, I will follow you wherever you will go. That's a blanket statement, isn't it? I'll go anywhere with you, Jesus. He's not really counting the cost, though, is he? I'll go wherever you want. Wherever you go, I'll go too. Not even putting in any consideration where Jesus might actually lead him. Well, where might Jesus lead you in your discipleship with Him? Might Jesus lead you to lose your job and lose all your earthly possessions because of it? He might. Would He be doing it for your good? Absolutely. Are you willing to, instead of indulging and giving in using stuff to buy stuff for yourself, are you willing to instead use the stuff that God gives to you for the benefit of other people? Because isn't that what Jesus did? He went around His whole life not caring a thing about stuff or having a house or having safety and security. He cared only about going out and serving other people. Are you willing? Are you ready to go under the exercise regimen that Jesus would have for you spiritually, to say that this life is not the end all? But if I'm going to follow Jesus and He's going to be my personal trainer, then I have to be ready and willing to give it all up for Him. We're talking a lot about an attitude of the heart, aren't we? Because we don't know if Jesus is asking you to give up everything, because He does bless you with the stuff. But are you ready and willing to do it? Because it's easy to say, Jesus, I'm going to follow you and I'm right there with you until you lose your job. And then what do you say? Jesus, what are you doing? You must not love me. You must not care about me. Right? Until we lose those creature comforts, and then we don't think that we're going to be following Jesus all that well. Are you ready? Are you willing? If Jesus is going to be your personal trainer, to follow Him even to the point of giving it all up. Second challenge, the next person. Jesus says to another man, follow me. And the man replied, Lord, first let me go and bury my father. And Jesus said to him, let the dead bury their own dead, but you go and proclaim the kingdom of God. Here is a person who has something really important to do, doesn't he? His father died. And he says, Jesus, I'll follow you, but I got to go take care of this business. This is a very important task that I have to take care of, and so I'll be with you in a minute, Jesus. Do you ever find yourself saying the same thing? Jesus, I'm following you, but you know what? I got this to do. I got something to take care of real quick, and then I'll get back to you. Oh, Jesus, yes, my Bible is right there on the desk, and it's time for my daily devotion, but I got to go do this. I got to go check this out first. I'll come back to you, Jesus. I promise. I'll come back to you. You ever find yourself doing that? It becomes even more stark when we realize what Jesus says to him. He says, let the dead bury their own dead. And all that he's saying in that statement is he's making kind of a sort of a harsh statement, is he's basically saying it's not that important. Yes, you think that burying your father is a very important task, and it probably is. But you know what? It's not as important as the task that I have for you, Jesus says. And the task that I have for you is this: go and proclaim the kingdom of God. In other words, your dad is dead. You can't do anything else for him. His eternal state is already there. So let somebody else bury him. You go and proclaim the kingdom of God to the living. And we might say, wow, that's harsh. Well, yes, it is. But guess what? Jesus is challenging us today to examine our discipleship with him. And we're letting him assess us and remove all the junk that's standing in our way to greater discipleship. And what stands in our way is often the fact that we say we have other things to do first. I'll get around to it. Yes, I have that neighbor that desperately needs to hear about Jesus. But first, I got to mow the lawn. We can always in our lives find stuff to do, can't we? There's always stuff to do. It's not hard to find. And Jesus says, every now and again, why don't you put that stuff aside and say it's not that important right now? What's important is maybe talking to that neighbor about Jesus and going and spreading the kingdom of God. And Jesus challenges us to assess ourselves and to say, all right, Jesus, I want you to be my personal trainer. Weed out all that junk from me and help me get straight. And Jesus says, then get your priorities right. And don't think that the stuff that you got to do is all that important.